Hello, everyone. This is Addy Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. I am here with Jeremy Gunetilleke.
Yeah, that's great.
And Jeremy is a very interesting person and someone who has a very courageous and I think really helpful story to share with people. I found Jeremy via Sean Atwood's channel, so I would encourage people to check out that interview. But before you do that, even go and check out Jeremy's channel as well, because he has started making videos in particular about an experience he had as a child getting abused. So Jeremy, do you want to just go into the origins of your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so that's great. So my YouTube channel and my social media platforms, I'm really using it as a way to express and communicate how I feel about the abuse that I went through as a child. And the aim really is to communicate my feelings and the story and the subject in the most engaging ways that I can through film, photography, illustration, etc.
That's really interesting, Jeremy. And were you like, because YouTube is not your main profession, so what kind of what was the catalyst for sharing your story? Because I saw in your interview that you had to go through a process before you could reach a point where you could talk about these things.
Absolutely. It wasn't until, so the abuse was going on when I was around 8 or 9 years old. And it wasn't until I was 24 years old that I actually started thinking, really seriously thinking about the abuse. It wasn't until I was 24 years old that it really started really distressing me. And it was a long process of understanding those feelings, admitting those feelings. And then I started speaking out 3 years later, 3 years after those initial memories. And that was an ordeal in itself. But to speak out for the first time was really, felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It was a really incredible feeling. And so I continued doing that over the next 5, 6 years, telling one person at a time. I would speak to close friends about what had gone on. And each time I would speak, I would grow in confidence and grow in strength, if you like, being able to speak out loud about this. And actually, one of the very interesting things about it is, as I was speaking out more and more, I actually started to become proud or proud that I'd come out the other side of this. I started to think, oh, this is really my story, and I'm going to tell it like it is. And that was a really nice feeling, transformation that I felt. So yeah, at this time I was working as an engineer. My trade is mechanical engineering, and during this time I was very into my work, into my career, into progression within my career, etc. But this really started to the thoughts about this and possibly sharing my story publicly really started to take over, and that's when I started to make the move into creating content online.
How did people react initially when you told them about it, your friends and family?
So it was my friends initially for the first 5-ish years of speaking out. And they were in complete shock because actually, I would say approximately the first 5 people that I spoke to, they were all friends with me when this was going on. So they were in absolute shock that I had never said anything. It's very difficult to understand why somebody wouldn't say anything for all those years. And of course, they felt sadness and they felt hurt themselves that one of their close friends had been through something like this.
Yeah, definitely. And could you tell people, I guess, because we do have about an hour, what started your, I guess, hunt for this guy? And maybe you could go through step A to Z, as you guys say over in England.
Yeah, that would be great. So once I'd spoken to a handful of people about this, I started researching on the internet about what's going on out there. And in doing that, one of the questions that kept coming into my head is, I wonder if this man that did this to me when I was a child is still doing it now. That was one of the big questions. Where is he now was a question. What's he doing now? Is he still doing this now? And that question made me feel very uncomfortable. And I tried to put it away for probably about a year, but I couldn't get rid of that question. And it was almost haunting me. So I decided to try to find him. So I started searching online. Now, I searched for days, every social media platform, every website I could think of. I had a couple of links. I knew his name, for example, and I knew that he was a nurse. So I had those connections. So I was looking everywhere, but
You knew his last name, Jeremy, too, or just his first name? Did you know both his first name and his last name?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, his surname. So I had a good piece of information, right? You would have thought you could find anybody online with just their name. But however hard I searched, I literally could not find him. But I could find his wife's Facebook profile. And on his wife's Facebook profile, he was there in her pictures. And let me tell you, to see his face again was like my heart missed a beat. It really was. It was intense. It was an intense moment because it looked like he hadn't changed at all. It was him. So I messaged his wife and I explained the situation and I said, can you get him to contact me? And two hours later, she'd blocked me. And actually in the message, I had explained, if he doesn't contact me, I'm going to have to go to the police. So she blocked me. So I reported him. Now, the investigation lasted 1 year and it was quite a intense year for me. One of the most intense things that I had to do was give my statement. And the statement actually was a 4-hour period of giving information. It was the first time I'd ever detailed the abuse, like in explicit terms. And I think we could say that was a release. It was probably a good thing to do, but a difficult thing to do. Now, the investigation lasted 1 year and it was actually closed in the end because I was told it couldn't be taken to court because there wasn't enough evidence. The case wasn't strong enough. And, you know, when I was explaining to people that it had been closed, of course, we're very angry about that. We're very angry that it couldn't be taken to court. But as I later understood, we can't take every case to court. We can only take the strongest ones to court. And mine isn't one of those strongest ones because really it's just my word against his. You know, this happened in 1993. There is no evidence, really. Now, we can prove that he was at our house because many people are saying that. And actually, there's a photograph of him at our house. So we can prove that he's at our house, but we can't prove any abuse.
And this investigation was 2018, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 25 years later.
Yeah, 25 years later, yeah. And you think in the 90s, there was no... it wasn't like there was no internet, there was no electronic age, there was no messages to get any type of recording. So the case was closed. And the case was closed. I reported it middle of 2018 and it was closed middle of 2019. Now, the case is closed. I am feeling sad about that. I'm feeling frustrated about that. Let me say two things. I'm feeling sad for that boy that I was, that we couldn't get justice for him. But I'm feeling frustrated as an adult that he denied it all. And I'm feeling frustrated that he possibly is still doing this and will be allowed to continue doing this. That was actually the main concern. We haven't solved the problem. We haven't solved the problem of if he is still doing this. Now, I sat on that for a number of months and I felt like I couldn't let it go. So I restarted the search for him. I searched online again. Maybe I could find him this time. I couldn't. But I managed to find out a rough location of where he could, the hospitals that he could be working. So I decided just to go to those. So I drove to those.
Let me just jump in here, Jeremy. How did you find that information out?
Okay, so I found out where his wife's working. So I made the assumption, if his wife's working in that town, he must be working somewhere near, because they're a family, right? So he's not going to be too far. And you know what? I know it sounds like a long shot. It sounds like, oh, you're
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, you know. But I had to just work with the information that I've got. I had to do something. I had to make a move. So I went to the hospitals to try to find him. I thought it would be as easy as going to the reception desk and saying, is this guy here? And they could search on their system and say yes or no. But I really didn't get very far at all. And so I went back home. And again, I'm feeling not so great, because again, we haven't solved the problem. Is he still out there doing this? So I sat on it for a couple more months, and then I was driven to action again. And I went and parked my car outside of his wife's work and thought to myself, right, here's the plan. I'm going to wait until she comes out of work and follow her home so I have their house. That's as far as I thought. Now, this decision was one that I never wanted to come to. I never wanted things to come to this, because going to his wife's work and following her home always felt slightly criminal. It wasn't great, you know. But it was like I had no other option. It was like I had to get this. I had to answer this question, and I had to answer the question of, is he still doing this again? I had to confront him. I had to get him to face me. All of these things. I couldn't rest otherwise. So I drove to his wife's work and I parked my car outside of the gate. And I watched all the cars coming out when the office closed. And it began to get dark, and I couldn't see her. I didn't spot her anywhere. And I started thinking to myself that this is not going to work out. This is a stupid idea, I was saying. What are you doing? Why did you think this was going to work? And then literally, I said to myself, 5 more minutes and I'm going. And literally, she walked out. I was expecting her to drive out, but she walked out. And I was in my car and I was like, oh my God, that's her. So I had to think quickly, because I couldn't drive and follow her because I was expecting to follow a car. So I jumped out of my car and I began following her down the road. Now, I had to make sure I didn't get too close. I had to make sure she didn't catch me. She knows what I look like, you know, she knows who I am. And she knows that from the police investigation. She was also involved in the police investigation. So she knows exactly who I am. So I'm following her down the streets, probably keeping maybe like 10 meters behind. My heart is racing. And she turns into a housing estate and she lets herself into her house. So now I have where she lives, which means I had where he lives. So I took a couple of moments to myself and I thought, what are you going to do now? Like, where do you go now? And I just thought, you know what? You're here. All the lights are on in the house. The car is on the drive. He's probably home. But anyway, you need to grab this opportunity. So I approached the door and I knocked. Now, I can't tell you what I was thinking at this time. I don't think I was thinking anything, as somebody came from the other side of the door and began unlocking the door. And the porch light had come on. And the door opens and it's him. And I think we both, you know, he recognizes me instantly because he goes to slam the door shut. But I managed, my instinct pushed the door open and put my foot in front of the door. So now my toe is in front of the door and my heel is on the threshold, so the door cannot get closed, right? It was like, honestly, when I explain that bit of the story, I kind of just say, like, if there is a God, if there is one, or if there is somebody helping me out, this is the time when he helped me out, because the door was securely open. Now he's trying to get the door closed and grabbing the security chain to get the door closed. And I'm now in control. I'm now in the driving seat. And I look straight at him and I say, you remember me, don't you? Did you honestly think that I wouldn't come for you one day? Now his face is full of fear, full of shock. He's shouting, go away, go away, go away. He's saying, you're trying to blackmail me for money. You're a drug addict. You're looking for drugs. He's just saying whatever he can, right? So I'm saying what I want to say to him. So I'm saying, do you remember? Do you think I forgot? Do you remember when you used to X, Y, Z? And every time I got to the XYZ, he'd like shout over me, trying to drown out my voice. It was like the epitome of a guilty man. It was like the demonstration of the reaction of a guilty man. So his wife is in the background. She's come down the stairs and she's now calling the police. And the police arrive. They arrest me. And I get put in the cell. Now, I have to give an interview, and the things that they are charging me for was assault, for pushing him in the chest and pushing the door into him when I held it open, and stalking and harassment, for the stalking for following her home, and the harassment for the many times I've tried to contact them over the last year. So now I have to go to court for this situation. And having to go to court for this is definitely not ideal. It's not a good situation to be in. However, I'm going to speak out in court because they are definitely going to ask me, why were you in it? Why did you go to his house in the first place? And that will be my opportunity to speak out again in front of the justice system, speak out again in front of him, speak out again in front of his wife, and let everybody know who he really is. So I feel like the power is still mine. I feel like I'm still in the driving seat, even though I'm going to court for these charges.
So what happened at court? And well, before we get to that, what was going through your mind when they were cuffing you? Because I doubt that it's happened to you before.
So when they were calling the police, I said to him, I'm happy you're calling the police. I'm so annoyed they're not involved anymore. If you call them, you're doing me a favor, right? Now the police arrive. It was a full works, blue lights, everything, 3 police cars. And when they said to me, once they'd taken the statements and they said to me that they were going to arrest me, I suppose I was in a little shock, but my adrenaline was flowing so much. It was when I was put in the cell that I was like, this is not so good. This is not so good.
That's when it kind of hit you a little bit, like, wow, this is messed up. This is not backwards, right?
Yeah, this is backwards. That's exactly how I would describe it. How have we ended up in a situation where I'm the one being arrested and I'm the one in the cell?
So what happened from then on? Because you were only in the cell a little bit, right?
Yeah, I was in the cell for maybe 3-4 hours until they could interview me. And you know, when they interviewed me, it was everything you would imagine you would expect an interview process to be. Why were you there? What happened? Do you think actions were acceptable? What are you going to do now? Are you going to go back to the house? All of those kind of situation questions. And I mean, what can I say? I answered why I went there. I answered it. I'm not going to go back to the house. I've confronted him now. He's faced me now. That's really one of the big things that I wanted. And now we're back in the spotlight. So that's good.
So in the end, like right now, are those charges still processed on you, or were they dropped, or how did that end up?
Yeah. Okay. So in January, I had to go to court. And I thought it was going to be me, him, his wife, everybody there. But actually, it was just me. And as I learnt that day, it was a plea day. So it was my not guilty or guilty plea. And if I go not guilty, then they give me my, sorry, if I go guilty, they give me my punishment there and then, and it's all finished. But I went not guilty because how I'm not guilty of I'm there for a reason, you know. I'm there to have a discussion with a man. I wasn't there to cause any I wasn't there to cause any violence or anything, and that is clear from the way I behaved. I was there to have a conversation with a man. So I went not guilty, and now it's been deferred to trial. So now trial date will come, but it's been postponed because of the coronavirus situation.
Okay, so you won't actually go to that trial until after this craziness has settled down a little bit. That Absolutely. Is quite a story, Jeremy, that you tracked him down and that happened. Let's move to something a little different before we go back to your story. I just want to know if you'd be comfortable sharing where you are in England or the UK and what the situation is like there as far as the pandemic goes. Police, how they're behaving, maybe what's the vibe of people, just whatever you'd like to share about your situation in the pandemic as it stands today.
Yeah, okay. So we are in lockdown, full lockdown. We're in the 5th week of lockdown now. And we have been told yesterday from the Prime Minister that we have passed the peak of the virus, which is made everybody feel relieved and and optimistic. So we passed the peak of the lockdown. On Thursday, this Thursday coming up, next Thursday, they're going to release an exit strategy and how they're going to start easing lockdown. And so we're all very happy about that. When lockdown started 5 weeks ago for us, the roads were empty. It was very surreal. It was very, very surreal. The motorways were there was only a few cars on the motorways, nobody on the streets. But as time has gone on, I've noticed things are a little busier. People have started to go back to work where they can, and things are slowly returning. Thankfully, the number of deaths are dropping, but we are all looking forward to things settling down and us being able to go back to normality. And I think something it's taught many of us is the luxury of freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, can you go into that a little bit, Jeremy? Because over here in the States, we're quite interested in what is going on there as far as the police, because we're seeing some weird videos of police breaking down doors for people playing music and weird stuff like this. And even in my home state of Wisconsin, I saw today on Twitter a video of them. Well, they didn't break down a door, but they visited this woman who, because her child went over and had a play date essentially at the neighbor's house, which is just absurd. But anything like that going on?
I haven't seen any videos like that. There's certainly not videos like that on the news. I'm catching 20-ish minutes of news a day. So I have not seen any videos like that. But I do know that the police, I'm not sure about now, but when lockdown was started, I do know that the police were arresting people if you were out for not essential reasons. So there was a fine, I think £30, which is about $50, I think.
Okay. Wow. Shout out to Alinda for the super sticker. I really do appreciate that. And Autumn actually had something to say to you, Jeremy. She said, I think Jeremy will remain calm at the trial. And she meant pedos, I believe. The pedos always want the victims to become emotional. So you're getting some support here from the viewers a little bit, Jeremy.
Yeah, and that's great. And that's a great comment, because I think I think the people who are doing these things are relying on the victims, the abused, to remain embarrassed, ashamed, and so that they don't speak out. Of course, it's the silence that is allowing this whole thing to thrive. That is one of the main reasons why I feel it's so important. I do my bit to share my story, because it is the silence that is allowing this to thrive behind closed doors. In one of my recent posts on my social media, I wrote a small post about, actually, this is also a pandemic. This is also an out of
Yeah.
control pandemic. It's just living behind closed doors, and there it is thriving.
Yeah, I agree, Jeremy. It seems to be something that people are becoming more and more aware of in society at large, and it seems to be unfortunately present in all of our institutions, and not just present, but ingrained into their very fabric almost.
Absolutely. I think it's, I agree with you. I think it's slowly creeping into the light. I think it's reported more than ever. Still not enough, but more than ever, I would say, with the internet and everything. And yeah, I agree with you. It is ingrained in all the institutions, and this is something that sexual abuse of minors is something that doesn't care about social status. It doesn't care about location, wealth, even how close your family is. It doesn't. It doesn't care about any. It creeps in everywhere, and that's why it's so important that we continue to speak about it. And by speaking about it, we're removing the stigma, right? And the stigma is what creates the shame and the embarrassment that's keeping it silent. So all of these are productive and productive things.
That's yeah, it's a lot to unpack there, Jeremy. And just a question on, have you encountered other people like you since you've come out about this in your area, or certainly through the internet, I imagine?
Through the internet, for sure. It has been overwhelming. It's been so encouraging, the beautiful messages that I receive, and so many people who are contacting me saying they are either also speaking out, and they share my the good feelings that brings, and also people who are writing to me to say that this has also happened to them. Yeah,
Yeah, it's it seems to be a problem that I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. And what are your thoughts on something like Epstein? I don't know if you want to share your thoughts on that, and maybe how that relates.
So I have not followed that story very closely, so I would be uneducated to really comment. I have watched, I think I watched one documentary a little while ago, but I it's a great example of your comment saying how it is ingrained in institutions, and it's a great example of how to show that it's everywhere. You know, it's
Yeah.
everywhere. But yeah, I'm not informed enough to make a comment on the Epstein thing. But just to go back to your, you just said, you just mentioned, you know, you're not sure what would be the cure or the prevention method for this. I also agree with you. I think it's such a complex situation that there will have to be many things that we do to reduce the chances of this happening. And one of them is having open conversations with children.
Yeah. And talking to them about this is something that I don't think it's comfortable for many adults to talk about it with each other, let alone with children.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's great that
I
you're
completely agree.
doing this work, Jeremy, because it, as you said, it lifts that stigma and that kind of white elephant in the room of talking about that, and that it lifts the covers off that. But did you have trouble remembering anything about this time period when you were getting abused because you repressed it?
So the first time, the memories came back stronger than ever before when I was 24 years old. Now, prior to that, I always knew that it had happened. I always remembered, but it wasn't causing me distress. So I was going about my life. I had a good job. I had great friends. I had good social life. I wasn't suffering with what had happened. It was a real turning point for me at 24, where I just remember I was where I was, and I just thought, oh no, something feels really unusual. Something feels really unusual. And I sat with that for a little while, and I thought, I know what it is. I know what it is. And these feelings became stronger and stronger and stronger. And I was saying to myself, just don't worry about it. You know, we've come a long way. That's never been a problem in your head. Don't worry about it. Push it away. Push it away. I was saying to myself. But as things progressed, the memories kind of grew stronger, and they grew, and I just couldn't get rid of them. It was 3 years, right? From the initial memory to speaking out was 3 years. 3 years of trying to push the memories away, but I could just see it wasn't working.
Yeah, 3 years, and you said you were 21 when they first started to appear?
Sorry, 24 when they first appeared.
Okay.
27 first said something.
But they happened when you were 8, you said?
8, 9, yeah.
Okay, so that is a long time to not have that really affect you in a way that you're conscious about, which to me is really interesting, because I think other people can share that experience, Jeremy, of memory repression, if that's what we want to call it. I don't know if that's the right language for what we're describing here, but for me, I can recall in the past that it's happened, but it was only a few years. It wasn't, over a decade, which is a really long time. It's something like, for you, it was like 12 or 13 years.
Yeah.
So I guess just observing that length of time for me is really unique, that your brain somehow, did that for you or to you for whatever reason.
Yes. So something that I found fascinating, I find what we're talking about now, this whole memory repression thing, it really fascinating, actually. And somebody gave me a really nice analogy. They said that when something traumatic happens to you when you're a child, what you do is you box it up and you put it to the back of your mind, because you're not mature enough to deal with it. Now, when you grow with maturity, your subconscious slowly starts opening the box, because it knows now you're ready. Right? So that is a great analogy, I think, for and my situation where I spoke out so late into my 20s. I think there's a great statistic, actually, of where they've done this with men, and it's towards their late 20s to early 30s that most people are speaking out. And it's this thing of, when it happens, you can't make sense of it. You don't understand it. You don't even know what's going on. And then you're 12 and you're 14 and you're 16, and you still can't really, you're not ready. You're not ready to deal with that. But I just would like to add that it wasn't that I forgot about it. And I know I never forgot about it, because there were certain things that really triggered the memories. One of those things, which is a film called Sleepers, which is an old film. It's an old film, and it's about boys that were abused in a prison, in an institution. And I remember watching that and being and having a really difficult time. And there were a few other things in the 15 years that would keep reminding me that this happened, but I was okay with it. It wasn't distressing me. It wasn't causing me pain or discomfort.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's it's really interesting that that the brain does that for children to release that, because it does seem that during the first years of college, especially that first year, like freshman year, is a really stressful time for a lot of young people, or wherever it is, first year in the military, first year, away from the nest, so to speak. But yours actually happened, like 5 years after that, assuming that you went on that regular path. But what are your plans for the future with your YouTube channel? And do you have any partner organizations that you're working with or for?
Yeah, okay. So my plans for the future is to continue creating the most engaging content that I can create. I want to make people interested in this subject. I want to try my best to engage people who have a direct link to this subject, and also, as importantly, people who do not have a direct link to this subject. I want them to be scrolling down their newsfeed and be like, it's a video from this guy about that subject. He creates interesting stuff, and they want to learn more. They want to know more. That's a great way to spread awareness. So for the future, I want to continue working with film, short film, photography, illustration, and continue to make the best content that I can. My most recent piece was a short film. It's an 8-minute film about what happened when I knocked on this guy's door. There's no budget for any of this. It's all favors from people who I've met along the way. And we created a short video. It done really well. And now that's linked me to you, and it's linked me to Sean Atwood, which is a fantastic thing. And I just want to really express what I know. And you know what? Something that's very important, to squeeze some good out of what happened to me. That would be a great thing. Let's learn something from it. Let's not just leave it as dead weight.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Squeeze the good out of it. And do you have any books that you used at any point during your life, Jeremy, that helped you cope with stress or trauma or mental state?
I was always interested. I am interested in self-development type style things. So I think I've always been very interested in improving myself and getting better at things, and listening to people who are talking about that type of thing. So from my early 20s, I was always interested in the very typical self-development books. And then I just started listening to more podcasts and then watching documentaries. So I've always absorbed that type of information. I don't
Do you
think I've
remember
lost.
the names of the books or the podcasts, or do you have any favorites that you would go to?
So Joe Rogan's a massive influence on me. And I learned a lot about conversation from him.
Definitely.
I listened to a lot of a guy called Jordan Peterson, who's a clinical psychologist.
Yep.
Fascinated with his work. I've now recently just got onto a guy called Sam Harris, who opposes Jordan Peterson,
Okay.
and very interesting guy. Books wise, it's a very interesting question. Oh, I couldn't pick out any titles. I'm really sorry. I'd have to prepare for that.
That's all good. That's all good, Jeremy. Yeah, just those people that you mentioned. I'm always interested to ask people about that. Just who influences their thoughts and philosophy. I do know who those guys are. I haven't delved into Sam Harris's work yet. I do want to check him out. But yeah, Jordan Peterson, actually, I got his book as a gift last year. So I do own his book. It's not with me right now, though. It's trapped in Europe at the current moment. But yeah, those all those guys, I know who they are. And yeah, if you ever have any book titles that do come to you, or blogs or magazines, websites that you go to for that type of information, I just let me know. I always love discussing that with people. And what about as far as keeping mental health strong and therefore performance? Do you do anything for exercise regularly?
For sure, it's always been a big part of my life. So I am practicing yoga. I've involved in boxing as well as a sport. I like to go to the gym. For me, doing a little bit of activity every day is just so essential. You know, it calms you, it solves problems, it refreshes you. It's a very important thing for me. And I also are very, very fortunate to have a fantastic set of friends, and I often am meeting them to have social events and just to keep on top of things like mental health. I think it's so important, especially as I'm dealing with this. So I'm working this project now full time, this project of trying to raise awareness. I've come away from engineering. This time last year, I decided that I should really make a good go of this. So I sold whatever small things that I owned, and I got rid of half the stuff that I had and put it all in a car. And now I'm sleeping on people's couches to keep money down. And I've got all my savings together, and I'm really going for this. And I really hope to really get something off the ground. Maybe a podcast. Maybe I'm looking into putting on something live, so like a live performance that people could come and watch. I am looking to create more videos. Like a lot of my content, most of my content so far has been about my story, about trying to find him and the memories and the court situation and the police situation. But I'm writing a new piece at the moment, and that is called Why I Never Said Anything when this was all going on when I was a child. And I want to explain that to people so that they can understand how easily this can happen, the grooming process, how easily influenced children are. And I hope that that will initiate at least one set of parents to talk to their children. That would be job done. But I don't just always want to report my story. I want to go down other avenues of talking about the subject, explaining how easily this can happen or how often this happens, and really get the discussion going, you know.
Well said, Jeremy. And I wish you all the best in those goals. I had a question about race. If you feel comfortable talking about it.
No problem.
Just speaking for myself here in the States, I have encountered verbal racism growing up in the Midwest, which is especially Wisconsin. It's predominantly Polish and German ancestry. That being said, it was rarely, if ever, all physical, and I do. I must say I'm grateful to say that I had a very good childhood. I was never in a big city that long, so I never had any extreme experiences with it. But just I want to ask you, as someone who is an ethnic minority in the UK, what, if at all, your experience is with that?
So I was growing up in a predominantly white area, and I fortunately never experienced any racial tension or any problems growing up. Now, possibly, I've said that to a few people before, and their response has been to me, "You never noticed." So I'm not sure. I don't feel like I had any direct disadvantage through race. Who knows, when I was in the job, when I was going for job interviews or situations like that, possibly I had experienced some but never noticed it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's always been okay. I'm very fortunate. I know that is not a lot of people's experience, being in any minority group, actually, not just race. And I'm very fortunate to say that, yeah, I haven't had any issues, or with this work either. I haven't had any issues, which is great.
Wow, that's fantastic. And are you in rural England, Jeremy, or in a city?
Yeah, so I'm London City. So,
wow.
But where I grew up was a smaller town, predominantly white. But I mean, London City is beautifully multicultural. So,
yeah, it is. I've been there several times. I do love to visit London and England in general. I just find it interesting to ask people about that, especially someone like you, Jeremy, because you are very similar to me in that sense, that you grew up around predominantly white people despite being a minority. So I really wanted to ask you that. But we do have a couple questions here, Jeremy, from some people.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
In the comments. Dana, we kind of went over this a little bit, but did he have something that triggered the memory? So you mentioned before that that one particular movie did it. Anything else that did it for you when you were growing up?
It's the one particular movie called Sleepers, which is about abusing small children. Seeing a guy in the street that looked exactly like my abuser, that was a huge thing for me. When I was in my college years, going out partying and stuff, if we would go out to a town and get a hotel room, like me and my friends, I could never sleep in the same bed as one of my pals. That was always something, because I just felt very uncomfortable getting close to another man, even though it was like my best friend. These were all the little triggering things that now I look back were a real problem for me.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that, Jeremy. And Autumn has a question, a very specific one. I'm not sure if you can help out. Hi, Addy. Could you ask Jeremy if there are any good lawyers out there to help adults abused as children?
Yeah, I'm so sorry I couldn't help you with that question, but
Yeah,
I wish you good luck. Yeah.
I would say look locally. That would be my first
Yeah.
recommendation, is to check out your local lawyers for sure. Boxing and martial arts teach mind-body control. This is true. We did cover
Absolutely.
the exercise, and Dana was talking about that before. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that I had for you today, Jeremy. And I do have
Right.
another interview coming up soon
No problem.
here. So before we sign off, is there anything else you wanted to share? And I do want to say, Jeremy, I would love to chat with you again. I think there is
Yep.
demand for people like you to share their stories.
For sure. Now, so for anybody that's listening now, you can check out my socials and my YouTube channel. I'm sure, Addy, you'll put the details in the
Definitely.
box.
Yeah, I'll put all
And,
your links in the description, including your
excellent.
documentary that you did.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. And you can follow this journey, and you can message me and ask me any questions. That's great. Actually, challenge me with your ideas and opinions. That's great, because it helps me develop my mind. And I think we should definitely catch up again soon, when I've developed this idea about the video of why I never said anything. And I want to start moving things in a direction of education and awareness, not just about my story, about the subject. So I'd love to catch up again, maybe next month.
Awesome. Definitely, Jeremy. Yeah, just let me know. And for everyone listening, how again should we pronounce your last name, Jeremy?
It's Jeremy Gunetilleke.
Gunetilleke. Jeremy
Yeah.
Gunetilleke. So this has been a very special edition of Addy Chats with Jeremy Gunetilleke and his very amazing story. I will again put all of his links in the description box below, so you can check out his documentary, his other YouTube videos, and his interview with Sean Atwood as well. Looks like you got a new subscriber already, Jeremy. Autumn there. And thanks again for the super chats, guys. Rock Girl, Autumn, Linda. If you girls, guys, want to talk after the show, just message me, and we can definitely do that. And Jeremy, excuse me, I would like to talk to you as well after we sign off. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. Cheers.
Thank you.